Okay, guys, happy Friday. Here we are, 31st, last day of May. Of course, we're going to look at Bitcoin on a Friday. A little volatility over the last 24 hours, which I would propose to you is not necessarily a bad thing. It helps us get some idea of where we are in the count. Now, I know you can't see it here, but I just wanted to note a few points here. So we've got some resistance. Looks like we may, we didn't quite get there, but these are going to be significant. Here's the next big one that we're going to run into on the way up here. We're not there yet. That's a little over 101-ish. And you can see that may line up rather nicely here with this structure here and prior resistance. But then look left and we've got this one here. Do you see, right? So support, resistance, is that back in play? The all very, in any one of these, potentially now an area of resistance as we work up through these. So it's not a bad idea just to wick them off so you're not surprised by something. They have just a remarkable way of coming back into play. So if now, I'm not suggesting this, but if we were to go up, oftentimes these will be areas of support as we come back through them. But right now, here, look what we've done here. This has been a $6,000 move off the lows. So the fact that we broke 9, this psychological number maybe. So this little pullback here is not terribly surprising. I'm just going to pull this off here. So now let's go dig into that. Let's go. Let's try the 2-hour here. Now there's some tricky counts in. When you get these wicks like this, it's hard to reconcile it. What do you do with it? What do you call it? So you can just looking here, you can see we've got just a free fall here and then a scream higher. So these wicks make it difficult, but they have a way of framing the market. So here being a good example, I just wicked off a prior resistance point here, and look when we had our first little free fall, look right where we came. As I said, they have just a remarkable way of consistently coming back into play in the market. So with the sell-off that we saw in the last 24 hours, it's not unreasonable to think we've got at least an intermediate term top here. Now, if this rallies over the weekend and we go up to new highs, this count will be invalid the way I'm going to show it to you today. So we can accommodate that. We might have to change the count slightly, but at the moment, this looks like a reasonable spot for a top. So to complete the entire pattern, here's our impulse off the low. We'd come into 3, 4, and we get the extension in the 5. So that's what it appears, and the subdivision is there to support it, with a few areas of you've got to use just your best judgment to deal with these pump wicks. Excuse me. Okay. So let's see. So coming off of our low here, so it would be 1, 2, 3, scream down for the 4. The support holds it, and now we have finished here. So let me maybe I have to open this up a bit more. Okay, so let's dig into it. Coming off of the idea that we have completed. So what I'm trying to suggest here is from the proposed 4 low, we have a completed impulse here to give us the 5 of the 5 of the 5 of the 5 of potentially now what I would propose to you is just the one wave off the low. So $6,000 one wave. Pretty good move, right? That's why we love crypto. So from this low here, 1, 2. Hard to argue with that as our impulsive 3. The subdivision certainly supports it. Now here's where we have to make a judgment call. So I'm going to have to open this up even more. So this happens so quickly and is rejected so quickly, it makes it very tricky for us to break down any subdivision in here. So what I think we have to do is just kind of process of elimination now that we have the benefit of what's followed. And we kind of work backwards here. So coming from this pivot up here at what we get, let's call it 9,100, at least here on Bitstamp. If I work backwards, I can work my impulse here, right? So clear impulse, right? It's hard to miss it. So from this low, well, now I'm just working backwards. So here's an ABC to give me a pivot here. Working backwards, I've got another clear impulse. So the judgment call is here in the 1, 2, right? How do you deal with that, right? So So we're down to support, rejected quickly, and then we get a little retrace. Now, if that's a 2, let's see, let me open it up. It's it's shallow. But, well, let's see. Let's see, we'd have to do it, I think we'd have to do it this way here. So coming from the low, rip up to our pivot, A, B, C down to the 2. So I had that incorrectly marked. Doesn't affect us because look what happens here, right? So I was just noting that here. Okay, so if that's the 1, 2, 3, A, B, C, we're spared the overlap. So we stay with an impulse. So from this low to this pivot, all right? A couple of wicks here with a little front run on the 618, certainly potential, right? So this, these are worth wicking off here. So this one, not relative here, but note again, as I just kind of making the point here, these levels have an interesting way of coming back into play in the market. That's why I always wick them off here, and I just use something that's not going to be obtrusive into wherever my fib poles are, so I know what they are, thus the dashed line. Just a suggestion. Now, so from this as the proposed 4, well, see, so if I work backwards through that, I can get the 1, 2. There's my impulse in the 3, 4, extension in the 5. So from this pivot, we come up just a few shy of second target. It's not terrible. Now, if we take the length of the 1, so again, just looking for norms, right? Length of the 1 projected from the pivot of the 4. Well, here's the 100, 272, a little confluence zone up here. They're not what you would necessarily, that wouldn't be the area you would be looking to first, excuse me, for a pivot. Yeah, there we are, right? So we come right to it. Now you might also just look internally here from the 2 through the 3. Here we are to the 50, right? We're a little shy. Here was that algo target you can see on the left. So we're a little shy of it. I was watching this yesterday. I thought we were going to get it. But we get quickly, as it was rallying, that looked like the obvious target, but then the selling came in and broke it down. So with the break here of this 1, we have to assume that this 5 is completed. So with that established, now then we kind of look at it and go, all right, well, what does that do to the overall picture? Let's pull all of this off. Well, we got a couple of things to consider. Well, the first thing we have to look at is, okay, let's pull this here. Well, if that's the 5 of the 5 of the 5 of the 1, then we're looking for a much deeper retracement. So if I pull that, let's go back out to the 8 hour, just kind of put it in context. So the anticipation would be, if we're done here, you'd be looking for 50. Well, let's get that right on there. We'd be looking for a 50. So from the low to our proposed pivot high, well, here's right. So as I said, remember how these have a way of coming back into play. So here's the area we'd be looking for that too. Right now, it's not guaranteed to get there, but this is, if we're going to play Elliott ball here, that's what you're looking for. All right, so you can see here we've got structure. I have an alert on it. Right, so is there a buying opportunity prior to get, what are we going to call this? Let's call it 6,200. Is there a way to play this and trade this prior to getting to this level where we'd be just anticipating and somewhat salivating for the opportunity to be a buyer of Bitcoin at 6,200? Well, if you're a bear, you might not be salivating quite the same way that the bulls are here. But if this is going to complete and we're going to come down, this is certainly an area of interest. So note here, we all know this, right? We had this long sustained, 6,000 was essentially built over the course of a year. So even if I just use these wicks and we do it this way, you want to be just a little more, do it that way, right? It's just easier way to do it and just pull it across. All right, so there's all of this support here, all of that structure that was resistance. Once we got through it, what do? Come back down, we test it, then rip higher. So if we're going to come back down for another test, that's certainly a reasonable area to be looking for it. Right here, I'm using this pivot here, which as it's been remarkable how consistently that's come into play. And look where that lines up right at the 50, right? I tell you, nothing happens randomly in the market. So here we sit here, where now we've got a big gap down here. So if we want to be more precise about it, this is where anywhere in this zone is where we're looking for the 2. You can see we got low volume here, so we don't have the same market acceptance since the market went down so abruptly once we broke this level. So there, obviously one choice is to just sit patiently and wait and see, do we break this high? If we do, this count would need to be changed to accommodate that. Or you're going to sit patiently and wait for the retrace. As we sit here at 8,300, you need $2,000 lower. Can you wait for that? That certainly is a very reasonable approach to trading Bitcoin right now. Now, as I've mentioned many times, I don't like to short Bitcoin. Right? I do it very rarely. So for me, I'm not sitting here waiting for to do this. I'm not trying to get that. No, I'd rather wait for the buy. Right? In my view, crypto, most of it, let's say the top 10 coins are to be bought only. Right, now I know I'm going to get a shitload of comments on that. It's just my preference. Let me say it that way. Rather than trying to deal with the very shorter term swing trading, for me, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to do it in a different market. If I'm going to trade crypto, I'm always looking for, in the major coins, I'm looking for the buy side. That's where the wealth creation is going to happen. Not that you can't make a shitload of money shorting it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just giving you my personal preference. I will wait for the buys rather than try and deal with the shorts here. It's just my preference. All right, take it for what it's worth. Okay, so with that said, let's pull this off here. Now, where are we in the count? Well, let's go down to the hourly here. So this straight move down and the fact that it's being retraced, well, it's nothing terribly surprising here. So we would be anticipating, if we have a hard 5 here, we're looking for some sort of corrective action here. Now, we could have a 3, we could have a 5. But the first thing that's going to be a tell is the retracement. Do we keep with do we maintain an internal retracement? That's what I'm trying to say. So here's the range. If we're going to come back up here and test, right, we know a B wave, if this is the A, we don't necessarily know that it is. So potentially this is either the 1 or the A. But if we're going to come up here and get into that zone where we'd be anticipating, now we're going to come down and get a 3, 4, 5. Look where that would put us. All right, well, that wouldn't fit. If there's 6,200. That wouldn't support the idea that we had finished the correction. All that's setting up is a bigger sell-off. Right, that would be this, and then the implication would be we're doing this. All right, that's not how I'm interpreting it. But if I see 5 coming down, I'm going to be less anxious to be a buyer here. You guess it's just Elliott 101. If I see a 5, I'm anticipating a 3 followed by a 5 if we're going to get a zigzag. So right now, I don't know what I have. I got something. I got a sell-off of over $1,000. What did we get from 91? What was our low here? We broke 8. So we got a little over $1,000. We're going to retrace some of that. This will be the tell. This is the next tell. What happens here? Do we stay with an internal retracement? If so, that certainly sets up a potential for those of you that like to short it. Certainly, there's a trade sitting there waiting to happen. You come right back up to this prior where we had this congestion into the turn there, tight stop. Yeah, if you're comfortable with that, have at it. All right, that's very reasonable. What's the alternate? So even if we go, let's go to the 15-minute. Do we even have enough here to call this anything? What are you calling that? 1, 2, A, B, C. There's just not enough there yet to really make any kind of a reasonable guesstimate as to what we've got. So far, I've got a move down, a little pause, and then it actually, it looks like it's a little beyond 100%. So what do you call that? Not much you can do with it until we need more data here to be able to quantify it, at least as an Elliott trader. So, I mean, we can look at the algo play here, but if you're trying to get a wave count on that's good luck with that one. Right, it's just not done. So you might just, maybe this is a 1, very shallow 2. So I'd be watching for do we violate that pivot? If not, if we come up here and we get this little pivot and we hold, we don't break the pivot here, which I suppose could be considered a 1 with a very shallow 2. Well, that's going to look pretty ugly as a 1, 2. Look at this as a 4. Doesn't look great. So if it's an ABC with a very shallow B, well, 1, 2, maybe Well, even that wouldn't work great. But so your best case here is you'd be working through some sort of a leading diagonal with the idea that maybe you had 1, 2, 3 going in, 4, 5. You're going to come up. Now you've got a candidate for a 1 wave or an A wave of a larger could get this, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 before we go down again. A lot of ways that this could play. So right now there's no way to quantify this. So I don't see any trade here other than the potential algo play, which is to be a seller at the 50 looking for that target. So 8,500 to 77. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, certainly a decent trade. You stop over the 65. Well, what's your risk reward? I mean, it's not a bad looking trade if you're comfortable with that. Oh shit, come here. Okay, what are you looking at there? 4 to 1? Yeah, shit, nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. So, tee that up, right? That's not unreasonable. So you could do a portion of it here, the other portion at the 618, so you'd effectively split the difference. So you'd have a split fill on the assumption that you went up there and you got filled at that 618. Now it looks even better. Well, there's 8 to 1 for that short. Now, what else would be something we could add to that? Right, if we come up here, maybe a golden corner. No reason to go to anything. Well, original may be too steep, right? Because it's just too short a period of time. So I'd start with the shift, see what that looks like. If we're going to come up here, something like that, not unreasonable at all. Go to, well, it's just out of curiosity, see what the modified. Jesus, come here. A little steeper here, right? Modified being just a channel. What would that look like? A, B, C. Where would that put you? Yeah, let's go back to the hourly. ABC. Are you done yet? Probably not, right? Here's the entry level that we're looking for. Interesting where that lines up. So, right, can't not likely to be done here. So something would have something in a broader context would be. I'm not assuming, right? I don't have this, but if we were to go here, it would look to me like we were just getting started with a larger correction. So that other than the short, I don't see an opportunity here to be a buyer until we get down here. If you're looking for a significant entry point, I mean, this is the most obvious place to be looking here. Other than the short, I wouldn't be chasing a long up here. There's just, I mean, could this just take off? Sure, well, of course, right? Nothing says it can't do that, but. It's kind of back to, is that a smart trade? Well, if you're just a raging bull, boy, and I don't see that, something that's technically working through some confluence here. What you have almost nothing here to work with here. So even just do we have this here? We've broken the 65 here, so that's implies more shorts. We have this back here, so it's right to the 50. So. So there's a straight play right there off of the 50. We come to the point of control. We've got all of this congestion area. So the fact that we're from this pivot low to the 50 to the tick, well, it means your count is wrong. So if we're gonna go up and get that, then we have to reconsider what's happened here. So this can't be the 5. So maybe we got to rethink it, right? So you might have to. Oh shit, that's gonna make it tricky. Well, maybe we have to make this the 3, this the 4, and we're into some sort of a diagonal, but now you're reworking all of these impulses here. So that's gonna be a tricky count, right? If we get up here, we have to reconsider the whole thing. But for the moment, there's no reason to go there just yet. So I think what we're likely to have is a bit of a fib fight here. So from the high to the low, since we've got that 50, now we're coming up right here. So this looks like we're gonna be. So we'll use the 618. We're gonna have a fib fight here. Right, and how we break out of this, and with volume and size and how far it goes, this is really going to be a tell. You could even pull it down here because you see the algo target. Do you see that, the green here, right here? So if this is going to go up here to the 50, it's going to go to the 50 and come down. There's the target right there on the golden zone. So you could really draw this. right here and say, whatever happens here is going to be a major tell. Well, at least we could say this for maybe over the weekend or into the next week. Are we breaking this way or are we breaking this way? Right. So here's one algo target. Here's an unfulfilled algo target right here. Who's going to win? Now, I didn't sell any Bitcoin up here. I'm not concerned about this. Sure, we need these. We need these retracements to help us identify where we are in the count. So I'm somewhat glad to see this. So then I can work through it and say, okay, I got a fairly good idea where I am now. So this is what I would anticipate next. If that doesn't happen, well, then we got to reconsider with the count as we have it. Right? The counts are fluid. They can change based on how the market responds. So I'm not locked into this. I've got 3 alternates on this. But right now, this seems like the path of least resistance, given the completed impulse here. So so for short term, yeah, there's some short term. There's a short term sell. I don't like the buy here. I personally, right? Even though I'm always looking to get long on Bitcoin, I don't like this here because the count doesn't make sense to me. Even though, right, you can say, remember, right, an algo doesn't care about an Elliott count. You've got a straight algo play there. But, you're going to bump into this one. So do you want to be a buyer going right into that 50? I don't, personally, right? I wouldn't do it. Right? And then, so let's say you break the 65. Then you're a buyer right into that high. Can you make money there? Sure. Yeah, nothing says you can't. But is that a smart trade? Right? Or are you just, playing the momentum, which, there's a place for that. It's just not how I would do it. So there you go. I think this needs to resolve, and then we're going to have a better idea whether this count is solid, if this is a good pivot as the 4. If not, and we're going higher, I'll have to rethink it. But until then, I just see a fib fight here. All right, guys, that's it for now. I got a couple more, so I'll be back to you shortly.